everybody, and welcome to another episode of Insufficient Friends. I'm Kevin, and I am alone this week. Yes, that is correct. If you haven't watched the last couple weeks, Nikki is off for maternity leave. She's having a baby, so she won't be around for the next couple months. So it's going to be interesting for that amount of time. I will be probably doing a few episodes by myself. There will probably be some other people coming in randomly to help out. But, yeah. But today you just got me. So, today in history, 1818, the Battle of Maipu? I don't know. Chile's independence movement. They won a battle over Spain, killing 2,000 Spaniards and 1,000 Chilean patriots. That's fun. On a happier note, a couple decades later, in 1847, the first civic public park, Birkenhead Park, opened in England. So that's more fun. That's nicer. That's prettier. Yeah. First civic public park in 1847. That's interesting. It doesn't seem like that long ago to not have a public park before then. Because you'd think that, I guess a lot of those were estates, though, and things that you go to now that are parks that were probably estates back before then and then turned into parks later. But anyway, this week, we don't usually do current events, but I decided to do current events this week, or a current event. We're not going to do conspiracies around this. I mean, might mention them, but right now, there's 4 people that are headed towards the moon as I'm recording this. It is the first time since 1972 that humans have been outside of Earth's orbit. And I thought it would be interesting to look at some of the history of space travel and our endeavors to the moon, because that's timely and something interesting. Moon missions, or not moon missions specifically, but space travel really got underway in the 50s. After World War II, the U.S. and Russia got into a battle for dominance during the Cold War, known as the space race. And Russia beat the U.S. at almost everything, pretty much. The Russians put Sputnik into space, which was the first satellite. It launched in October of 1957, and scared the crap out of the world, because, everybody thought it was a spy or something like that, spying on everybody, gonna be a bomb or something. No, everybody freaked out about everything, because they were worried that, at this point, you were worried about nuclear weapons and everything else, because, you'd just dropped the first nuclear bomb a little over a decade before that, and everybody was afraid. So it really only went up there, I believe, to take the temperature. I think that's the only thing that it actually did, was take the temperature. But it still freaked a bunch of people out. The Soviets also put the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin, orbited the Earth on the on Vostok 1 in 1961, in April of 1961, which prompted then President Kennedy to ask Congress for money, and put out the goal that the U.S. would land people on the moon in the next decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
So, a lofty goal to put people on the moon in 10 years, well, actually, in less than 9 years, when you haven't even put somebody in space yet. Very, very, very lofty goal. They worked on it. I don't even know that the Gemini project hadn't really even started yet. Gemini was the first project to get our Americans into space. It just orbited the Earth. That's all it ever did. Apollo was the next program that actually got humans to the moon. Apollo 8 was the first one that made it to the moon in December, well, right around Christmas of 1968. Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders circled the moon, I think 10 times. Is that what I said? 10 orbits. Yeah, 10 orbits around the moon on Christmas. On Christmas Eve. And quoted the book of Genesis from the Bible on national... take turns quoting the book of Genesis from the Bible on national television. So, that's, and it was, watched by tons of people back here. It was the first people to ever leave Earth's orbit, so that was a, massive accomplishment. And then 6 months later, that was in December of 68. 6 months later, in July of 69, Apollo 11 launched from Kennedy Space Center, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon on the 20th, late at night on the 20th, and took their first steps on the moon on July 21st of 1969.
Yeah, I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
With 723 million people around the world watching. So a fifth, 20% of the world's population watching them take their first steps on the moon. We went back to the moon several times after that. Through Apollo 17. and they did different experiments. They brought back rocks and things like that to test. And then in 1972, Apollo 17 came back, and we haven't been back since. Now, they're trying to rebuild this whole program back up. More of a effort to build a station on the moon now, kind of like the space station, and possibly use it as a stepping stone to send people to Mars and other locations in the universe is the goal. But right now, or just the other day, Artemis II launched, which is the second of the Artemis programs, which is the new space, the new moon lunar missions. Artemis 1 basically did this same trip without people. Artemis 2 is went around the Earth for about a day, and then did orbits around the Earth for about a day, and then is now currently heading to the moon to orbit the moon. They will swing around the far side of the moon, which will be lit up. From what I understand, the times that we've been there before, it was dark. Like, it was the time of day was dark, so they couldn't see anything on that side of the moon. So they're hoping to see different things. They're gonna take pictures and video of it, everything else, so they can see what's going on there, see what's over there, and then they're gonna fly back. They're gonna do some other experiments, hope to, and see make sure everything works. It's 50 some odd years since we've done this, so it's been a long time, and not necessarily because funding changes. We spent most of that time building a space station and putting that into space and having people live on that. And I think funding just dropped off entirely, and I don't think people cared as much. There's still conspiracy theories about if we went to the moon or not. People don't believe it. I mean, I don't know why, there was thousands of people that worked on it. You went several times. I don't really know. I mean, I know the concept that, you fake it because you want the Russians to, believe that you went, or you want to beat the Russians, and that's the main thing, because that's about the only thing we beat the Russians on in the space race, was getting to the moon. But at the same time, I think somebody would have figured out that you faked it. Like, you got to have too much involved, I feel like. But that's just me. It's still a major accomplishment for something like that. It is crazy that you have 4 people taking a 10-day trip in a capsule the size of a couple minivans. It's a 620,000 mile trip or something like that. It's an astonishing achievement, no matter if it was back then or now, even today. I mean, we haven't done it in 50 years, like I said, so it's still just crazy to think about when you look at it. But it is it's something else. I did hear on day 1 they apparently had problems with the toilet, which would not be fun. Apparently they got those fixed, which is good for the astronauts. This crew has the first non-American, so Canadian, a Canadian guy is on the trip. He is the first non-American to go into deep space, which is anything outside of Earth's orbit. Um, so, yeah, this is a an achievement, and it'll be interesting to see what they learn, what pictures they get, and see when they come back. Because my dad was he would have been 6 months old the first time they went around the moon. Orbited the moon, Apollo 8. So he doesn't remember any of the original ones. Um, I'm sure my grandparents, do, but my dad doesn't remember him. He was born, but he doesn't. A lot of people alive aren't, I'm not going to say a lot of people alive because people in their 60s and stuff would, but a good number of people aren't going to have lived through this or remember it. So, it's just an amazing achievement. The next one, I don't know if it's the next one, is like directly the next one, or they're hoping to send people back to land on the moon in 2028, I believe. Now, will that happen in 2028? I don't know. This one was delayed a couple years, I believe. So it's all. What's crazy is that looking back at this timeline is that in 68 was the first time they went around the moon, and then 6 months later they landed on it, and it's going to take, 2 years or something to go back or whatever. So it's a lot bigger time span, but whatever. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing that's going on in the world right now, and something fun to talk about. And I didn't really know what else to do, so that's what I decided to talk about for this week. And I think that means it is time for facts.
Fact Ball.
Just me, so as we talked about, one fact for this week. First successful powered, controlled, heavier than air flight. So plane. First plane to ever fly was Orville and Wilbur Wright on December 17th of 1903. In Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Lasted 12 seconds and went 120 feet. That means in 66 years, you went from flying for 12 seconds and 120 feet to flying days and 600,000 miles around the moon. You talk about crazy time spans. That is a massive jump in technology over a short period of time. Like, I have been alive to see the advancement of, like, most of the advancement of computers and the telephone and stuff like obviously there were computers in the 50s and stuff, so I know that I haven't seen the entire span of the computers, but I remember, like, the big personal computers at home to what we have now, like like smartphones and things like this. I remember when we had the bigger, like, big desktops and things at home, and now you have this, partly because of NASA and the space program, but of miniaturization of that kind of stuff. But it is that is a crazy time frame. 66 years to go from taking your first flight to flying around the moon is to me a crazy crazy time, like a crazy move. But anyway, I think that is it for this week. So a short episode because I don't have anybody to banter with except myself, which is a weird thing. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Happy Easter, because today's Easter. And I will talk to you guys next week.